Welcome everyone to the first edition of the Devil's Advocate podcast, newly rebranded from the Weekly Armchair Sports Talk. We're fully United centric now, and my first interview, first special guest since we renamed it the Devil's Advocate podcast is Pete Boyle. I've been asking Pete to come on with the last 2 years, and finally I've got him nailed down here this evening. So we're here to chat all things United, and most importantly, Pete's story. First of all, Pete, how are you? Thanks for joining us this evening.
I'm all right, thank you. Yeah, I'm all right. Had a long day at work and I've got an early start tomorrow, but I've been looking forward to this myself. So yeah, it's nice to reminisce sometimes and also, put my opinions out there, which I don't think they're as important as everyone else is, but I have got strong opinions on certain things.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's always great to sit down, Joe, like-minded Reds and talk about the club we love. I think, look, that's the most important thing. I think sometimes it isn't done enough in terms of, like you said, voicing opinions, but also just sitting down, having a genuine chit chat, Joe, about all things United and kind of our stories as well. And Pete, the first thing I want to kind of kick this off with is obviously your journey supporting Manchester United. Obviously, you go home and away to abroad, England, Ireland. You're coming in a few weeks, but obviously you've supported us for a long time and you've seen kind of a lot. As a Manchester United fan, Pete, how did you first get into supporting United? Was it a generational thing through family, or were you kind of brought in by the lore of the club?
No, it was very much so. I've got to be honest. It's quite funny because I'm a United fan by the toss of a coin, believe it or not.
No way.
Because purely, my dad was brought up in a convent by Catholic nuns in Manchester. He was an orphan after the war, and when he was kids used to play at schools like they did. We all played at school, and you'd pick teams and you say, heads your United, tails your City, and somewhere in the just after the war, like in sort of like mid to late 40s, in Disbury, Manchester, at a convent in South Manchester, they had a game of football, and they just picked teams, and my dad was flipped head to toe, you're on the United team, and it's as simple as that. Because my dad, when he played on that day, he just started watching United's results, and then as he got a bit older, he got to about 12, 13, he started following the team, and on the sort of on the radio as it was then, and in the news, and he used to cycle to Old Trafford. So I always used to say that coin, especially for all those sort of years in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, it could have been, because of the flick of a coin, I could have been a City fan, right? And it sounds daft, and that sounds so. My son Georgie, I say the same to him, and he goes, God, I could have been a Blue if it wasn't for your, for Grandad. I said, yeah. And it was that really, and the truth of the matter is, if my dad would have actually been a Stockport fan or a Liverpool fan or supported anyone, I would have gone whichever way they would, because I was, I looked up to my dad like a lot of children look up to their parents, and he took me at an early age, and I actually thought, I was born in 1970, I had a hard life, but until my dad died, about 2 years before my dad died, I was going to an old boys dinner at Old Trafford, and I rang my dad and said, "Oh, Dad, I'm sat on a table with Arnold Sidebottom and his son Ryan, who's obviously a famous cricketer, and Arnold Sidebottom played." And my dad said, "Oh, you saw Arnold Sidebottom play?" I said, "Dad, didn't he?" He goes, "Yeah, he did." Now, as it so happened, when United was in Division 2, United played Aston Villa. They were in Division 2 as well, in the old Division 2, which is like Championship now. And we played Aston Villa in November 1974. And we also played that, we both got promoted. And the next season, by pure luck, we played Aston Villa at home the same weekend. So we played on November the 16th, 1974, and November the 15th, 1975. And I was at both games. So for years, I thought I went to the one in 1970. I went to both. I didn't realise that my first game was in Division 2. So I can't quite claim to have been rampaging around the country watching United in Division 2. But my first game was in Division 2, United against Aston Villa. And and I look, because of the internet and all, you can look it up now. I don't remember obviously a lot about the game. I remember the goals and just the aura of the, of the actual being at Old Trafford. And I was quite lucky that, I don't remember much around that period. I think when we got promoted, but I started going more with my dad like the following sort of couple of seasons, and the season of the Docks Red Army, getting to Wembley. I was too young to go in 1976, my dad said, and I was only just gone 6. But the following season, we started going quite a lot, and I was at most of the cup run. And I remember being mesmerised at. I remember being mesmerised at a lot of the games that season. I remember playing QPR and Phil Parks, who's played for Western QPR. It did one of the best goalkeeping displays ever, and somehow we won. And about 2012, I managed to blag in the director's box at United QPR away.
Yeah.
Courtesy of actually the late legend Gordon McQueen, whose best friend Joe Jordan was assistant Harry Redknapp. And I was in like the director's box, and was in a little lounge bar having a meal and a drink. And Phil Parks, the QPR legend, was there. And I said to Phil, all QPR fans getting photographs, and I sort of discreetly went up to him and said, "Phil, I'm United." I said, "I remember being at this cup tie in 1977 and you played brilliantly." And I said, and he went, "Macari." I went, yeah. And I told him that one, And so I was, and then the semi-final at Hillsborough, when, less than 2 years after Leeds had been in the European Cup final, their only European Cup final in Yorkshire, and 55,000 at Hillsborough, and 40,000 United fans. This is this is in Yorkshire, right? And I was a bit mesmerised. I thought, why have we got all this? And there's so many urban myths and stories about United got all the neutral tickets because they bought them off Sheffield Wednesday fans. Leeds hadn't sold out their own allocation, believe it or not. They don't like to go on about that on all the forums and that. But basically, Leeds had the big cop at Hillsborough.
Yeah.
And there was that many United fans in there. The police had to cordon it virtually, at least a third, maybe nearly halfway. So it was days everyone wore colours, and all you could see was red, white, and black on one side, of 3/4 of the ground, and yellow and white. And I think, again, going back to Gordon McQueen, I think he said it in a few places, but in Andy Mitten's book, he said that when he come out, this was like in Yorkshire, and he just thought, wow, this club's something else, because it was like a home game to United. And the semi-final of a cup, in Yorkshire, and 3/4 of the ground is red, white, and black. And I don't know, I think I took it for granted a bit, really. I just thought, wow. And I was mesmerised by it all. And I remember asking my dad, imagine all the hostility sometimes you get online about fans coming from Ireland or from Norway or from London. And on St Maplesby Way now, when it's Warwick Road, where the foundation is, there's like burger stalls and scarf stalls.
Yeah.
And there used to be like a scarf stall there, or a few of them. And they used to sell badges with, I'm an Irish Red. Tin badges, I'm a Cockney Red, I'm a Brummie Red, I'm a Yorkshire Red, I'm a Geordie Red, right? I remember asking my dad once, could I have a badge or I'm a Cockney Red? He went, no. I said, why not? I didn't know what it was. But there was no shame. There was pride in it. And then I remember in 1978, it was United centenary, obviously 1878 to 1978, since the reforms, Newton Heath, etc. And we had a friendly game against Real Madrid at Old Trafford, and it was free entry as far as I'm aware, but it was about 50,000 there. And before the game, I was mesmerised. I was 8 years old, and there was like a procession round the side of the pitch for the game of all the supporters branches with placards, like a political march, like a modern day march. And it had Plymouth Reds, Malta Reds, Dublin Reds, Geordie Red, Cockney. And I was just going, wow. And I thought it was normal. And the point was, this was the time when, we'd been a great club. We did not long have to come out of Division 2. And we weren't the dominant team in the country. And we had this sort of following. And this is someone like me who'd grown up 2-3 miles from Old Trafford. I was thinking, all these people are travelling all this way to watch the club that's on my doorstep. And it was never any sort of to me, I grew up being proud of that, I mean, I'm proud of anyone who supports it, made it from proper fans, and that was it really for me. So I was mesmerised by the whole experience, and I must admit, growing up in the 70s, there's not loads of great footage, but for example, watch that 1977 Cup game against Aston Villa when we won 2-1. I was at the game. And I remember just like, in those days, more people wore colours. And I used to sometimes I sat on the fence at the front, but turning round like that, not watching the game. You know, where this game was going on, and I was watching the aura of the songs and the colours and thinking, wow. My dad would sometimes say, Peter, what's the match? Okay, yeah. And that's probably what got me into it, really. I used to go to bed just like singing songs. And I remember when I was 9, I met someone about 20 years ago who's a City fan, and he still remembered the day before the 1979 Cup final at school in Timperley, near Altrincham. I had about 15, 20 people going around the playground. I was 9 years old, singing United songs. You know what I mean? The day before the Cup final, so perhaps it was always. And then another memory which I've also got, and you know what, I couldn't remember anything from last season. Georgie has to tell me what happened, and I say, was that 2020? No, that's 2017, Dad. Okay, but anything from the 70s, 80s and 90s, I'm pretty hot at. And I remember when we won the Cup against Liverpool in 1977, my first Cup final I went to, and I was only 7 the day. I was 7 the day before the semi-final, which I was also at, like I said. I remember after the game, we won the Cup, and we went in a pub somewhere. I couldn't tell you where it was in London, and the pub was bouncing with United fans singing. It wasn't right near Wembley, it's somewhere in London. And some like random bloke put me on his shoulders, and I was like touching the chandeliers in the pub. And the landlord of the pub was going, get him down, he's going to break the lights. So that was 1977. Who would have think years later that I'd be standing in pubs singing United songs, eh?
Yeah, isn't it crazy? Years later, you're standing in the Bishop Blaze, and like you literally have the whole place like in the palm of your hand. I've been there when the songs have been going in there, and it's a great place to be. Match day. I just want to kind of touch on that. Obviously, you said like it's been kind of a generational thing. You've been supporting United all your life, and obviously you're very well known for writing United songs and obviously leading the songs in whether it's in Old Trafford in the Red Army section or obviously in the Bishop Blaze. When did that kind of come about? That you started kind of getting involved with the songs, and is it something that, again, like you said, from 9 years of age, you've seen it all, and it was kind of something you wanted to kind of take upon yourself?
Yeah, it's a bit of a strange one, really. I suppose my dad was quite introverted in lots of ways. He could do a speech when he was a union shop steward, but he was pretty quiet. And my mum was more. My mum would go to my mum did dancing, ballroom dancing, would go out, and if they went to a wedding or something together, my dad wouldn't get up and dance. My mum would dance where my dad wouldn't. And my dad was never one who sang at games, never at all. My dad was just cheered and then moaned if we didn't score, yeah. And I don't know. I don't know where I inherited it from, but I was never shy. And I think the key is, when I was about 9 years old, I had a poem published in the Manchester Evening News about football. I still remember it. It was, I'm football crazy, I'm football mad. I support Man United. I go to watch them with my dad. I like Old Trafford. I like Main Road too. Goodison Park and Anfield. Don't you? And it was like a picture of me with my buck teeth and my football boots. Like the stereotype picture when someone's lost weight, they have them in a big pair of trousers. And when they're singing about football in those days, they'd have you with your football boots round you like Roy the Rovers. And I did that, and then, I wasn't very academic at school, but I was sort of good at English, and I just realised I could pen lyrics. I could pen lyrics and poems and that, but no one ever pushed me on it. It wasn't really inherited from mum and dad, and I could just do it. I did a few different poems at school, and then when I was about 15, I had a poem published in the Manchester Evening News again about the cup final, which before I got to know him, I'd cornered Norman Whiteside a few times and sung it about the 1985 Cup final. And again, that was published again in Cup Final '85. And I once actually, when I was working at the airport, in another job I had at the airport about 5 or 6 years ago, Ron Atkinson was walking through, and I went straight over to him and cornered him, and I gave it the line, about no one curling the ball in, and he's like, right. You know, me like with my airport ID on, and I'm doing a poem as he's walking on the way to the gate. And I was with Ron doing an event there about a year ago. We had a laugh about it, you know. I think once David Mayer told him that I might be a bit mad, but I'm all right. I think he was a bit more relaxed with me. So yeah, so then moving on, I just realised I could pen lyrics, I could pen. And when I was about 13, I probably looked about 16. So I used to start songs of the day off in like United Road, which was like, you know, down the side, the famous Come United Road chant, obviously was generated from around there. And I realised that, I said, you know, if other people my age started to sing songs in those days, people used to sort of smile like a kid trying to start a song. I looked a bit older and I wasn't shy. And I think the key is, when I got to about 17, so many people wanted to start songs back in those days, but people were mortified at rejection. People were mortified at going, even just going, yeah, right. If no one joined, then they go, oh, God. But it didn't bother me. I just used to think, well, I'll just keep trying again. I'll keep doing it. And I think that's what it was. And then I realised in the early 90s that we had a lot of songs for past eras. And we had this emerging team coming out. We didn't really have many great chants coming out. So I suppose part of it is because I probably always wanted to be a footballer. And although I played all the way through school, I was never going to make it any higher than that. And I would love to have been in a cool singer in a band, you know, with my musical sort of love. And I couldn't do that. So I suppose the next best thing was to write songs about United. And I never really thought about it any more serious than that. But then I just started getting ideas about players. And I thought, and I think that was like, I used to get ideas in the bath, hence the first album, tape as it was then, called Songs in the Bathtub. And I did it as a bit of a joke, and I got it typed up, if you like, some sort of lyrics for about half a dozen songs. And then I thought, why don't we record a tape or something? Bit of a pipe dream, because you've got to remember then, going back in the early 90s, you couldn't record it in your bedroom like you can now. You couldn't just do it all on computer. If you wanted to record something, you had to book a studio like the old-fashioned way. They weren't very cheap either. I didn't have any money to put into it as such. Anyway, I started writing more songs, and I thought, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do a tape. So I got a few lads and said, oh, well, a bit of a laugh. But again, ringing round, it was hard to get somewhere that I could afford. So I ended up booking this studio in Manchester called Spirit Studios. And the only time I could afford it was something like on a Tuesday night from 11 at night till 4 in the morning, because otherwise it was so expensive. And I said to a few lads, do you want to come down? We all brought a few cans, and we had the landladies from the Pebble of the Peaks pub's son. When we used to have a few beers after a match, he used to get his accordion out and play along to us singing. And it was all pretty like, you know, we just do like songs that Omi Lads and Forever and Ever and From the Banks of Irwell and then Eric King and songs like that. But you know, we never had any real rehearsals or anything like that. But we decided to go to this studio. I booked the studio, and what I wanted to do really was, there'd been football songs out, like for England. There'd been songs out, even like for, you know, clubs used to bring songs out when they got to cup finals and that. But they were always usually like cheesy pop songs, like say it's quote. And it was never really the fans involved. It was like, you know, pardon the pun, it was almost like, you know, were bastardized versions of proper songs, right? So what I decided to do was to record United songs, old ones you know, from what I grew up listening to, and my new ones of random ones, and songs about, there were songs on there which I knew would never be sung. They were too clever in lots of ways. But then there were songs about, you know, about Paul Parker, about the rest of the players in that team. Some players might not really have a chant for, you know, there were songs about rivalries around that time, and we decided to do it. But I thought, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to edit out swearing. I'm not, because of my politics. There was never going to be anything dodgy on there.
Yeah.
You know, but I thought a little bit of effing and jeffing in the context of the songs is all right. So we go to the studio, and of course the studio guy didn't know what he was doing didn't know what he was letting himself in for. He's used to having bands who, record, think they're going to be the next big thing, and they take hours to record 2 songs, and it's just, and they go, oh, let's remix it and all that. And we recorded about 35, 40 songs in 4 hours, and he played it back almost like cringing a little bit. And I went, yeah, that's fine. He went, really? Okay. Left like a bit of coughing on it, and I tried to get everyone to sing the same sort of words to an extent, but if someone got a little bit wrong, we just left it on. But this is just a laugh, and this is how it's meant to be. And I didn't really think much of what I was going to do, and we got it all printed out. Songs from the back, a couple of spelling mistakes on there, on the inland. My mate was a Forest fan who shared a house with. He ended up doing every cover for me because he'd done the first one. A few people quite respected illustrators come forward, and I said, it's nothing personal, but my mate's been there from the start, so he did every design of mine coming through. And it became a bit of a cult classic, really. I mean, Songs from the Bathtub, United We Sing, and I remember Jim White, the United Jim White, who's had a few books out, who writes United We Stand. He referred to it in his book, I Watched Liverpool, and he said something like, I bought one off Boyle outside Wembley. He says, selling them out of a black bin bag, and he said, I got it home, put it on. It was foul mouth, out of tune, full of juvenile spleen, amateur production. He said, I loved it. that was like sort of compliment. And then I remember, went on to record maybe about another 10 albums, all with bathroom related titles. But one of the biggest compliments was about 22 years ago, and the Observer, Sunday newspaper, had a supplement, and they had a special feature on asking established pop stars and rock stars, maybe about 25 of them, from someone out of the streets to one of the Spice Girls to a few people, and they asked them to name the top 10 albums of the collection of all time. And there was a few different ones, few different ones of people. And Terry Hall, again, R.I.P. Terry, who sadly my friend who died last December. And Terry chose 10 albums. Amongst them was David Bowie, David Essex, and established, well-known, all-time legends. Number 7, Pete Boyle, Songs from the Bathtub. And I was like, wow. And when I contacted Terry, he said it had to be number 7 for Eric, yeah. And what made me laugh about that was I had visions of real music, sort of train spotter type music people who thought it was some sort of cult folk album or something. And you would have got home listening to that, and songs like Bright Eyes Burning Like Fire, My God, You Look Like David Gower, and songs like that, and songs about me getting my kit off at a game. And what was funny about that recording as well was Morris from the Pevel of the Peak, he'd come down, should we say, maybe having a couple of too many drinks before he got there, maybe for Dutch Courage. Got to the point where we recorded half the album, and he was at this stage, he wasn't really in a good place. So we had to send him home in a taxi. So the second side of the album hasn't got any music on it, because we didn't we couldn't really, it wasn't as easy those days to sort of start mixing it all up. It'd take too long. So so that it was still a cool album. And years later, as a sort of technology got more easy, we got producers who I could sort of, the first time I just had to let them do what, I had to sort of let them do it really. And then after a bit, I got to say, I want it like this. I want, we've recorded these tracks, but I don't want to put them in this order. I want a little bit of intro. I want this little thing sampling in here and all that. And I got to sort of I knew how to make it run. But sometimes some people, one album was really well produced, say number 7, and someone just said to me, no, it's too good. So what do you mean? He goes, there's not enough mistakes or coughs in it. We want the Pete Boyle album to be raw. And I went, right. And I listened to him So although, like, you know, the first one was probably the most unique and raw in its way,
Yeah.
I listened to that, and when I did the last few albums, although sometimes the music was quite good, I always made sure I left a bit of, you know, wrong words on, and a bit of coughing at the start, and a bit of, you know, someone coming in wrong a little bit, you know. I left that in because I thought it takes away what it is, because I'm not trying to be like a fully fledged pop star. I'm just trying to, and that's how it really started, really. And then, of course, released a few singles, and it opened a few doors in some ways. Got some good stuff out of it. Got a couple of tours of Ireland, and place at Isle of Man, and of course Scandinavia, and more so it just got, I suppose it got me on a few sort of like big sort of videos, like, you know, friendships with other people, and yeah, it was a good experience. I mean, it was, you know, contrary to belief, like, you know, and that's why I work 12-hour shifts now. It was never about making loads of money, but we had some great fun, and I look back at it, you know, and I think, you know, to go online, appear on The Big Breakfast, which was like a cult national television program at the time, when Eric was in court, and do that, and to get invited to play, you know, to play gigs abroad on the back of Singing United songs. It's quite crazy, really, when you think about from that first poem in 1978, 79, to suddenly, like, you know, singing on national television about my idols. And so it's been quite a journey, really, and then it's been good.
I can imagine, like, obviously doing all that, like you said, it's been a journey. It's been enjoyable for you, but also, like, it's the fact you're doing it, like, with something you love, like it's your football club, but also, like, it's your passion as well, like music. So they're kind of, they're kind of blended together. I'd say, like, for that, like, do you know the fact you've done it as work, like going on tour and stuff, but, like, you know the saying, if you love something, you never work a day in your life.
Yeah, and that's it. And the point is that the way I saw it is, I didn't make lots of money, but it paid me to go to the games. Yeah, contributed towards my cost of games, and it got me to see other places. I perhaps might have, you know, United might have played in Norway, but perhaps I might not have got to see the beautiful parts of Norway and Sweden and Denmark as I have done as much. Had I not been doing like tours, doing songs, and latterly like with some ex-players. So that's beautiful itself. I mean, it's, you know, look, I remember when Eric the King, like, you know, I suppose in some ways my dream was to be on top of the pops or something, right? And the bizarre thing with it all was that, like, the single was number 11 in the official indie chart, and that week it was number 11. Moby, Gary Newman, Oasis, and a few others were all below me in the charts for that week. Now, admittedly, they probably all, well, Oasis would have sold hundreds of thousands more. It was one of the songs that was on the way out.
Must have been quite satisfying, though.
Oh yeah, it was great to see, right? And the thing was, of all the because, like, at the time, singles charts, it was you had to, the way it worked in England and Ireland in particular, to get into the top 40, you could sell, say, 15,000 in London and only like 20 rest of the country, and you wouldn't go in the charts. So you could sell 5,000 in Manchester and 10. It had to be spread out a bit more evenly. So it was like those little independent shops you get in most town centres, good decent record shop. They had to be prepared to take it in. Now, if you're a band like on a little indie label, or, you know, you're on Creation Records where Oasis or Primal Scream were, they might take in. But then the record label will say to him, "Will you take 10 singles of this band, and we'll give it you for, like, you know, we'll give it you for £1.50. You can sell it for £3." And they'd say, "Well, it's worth the gamble then, because they can make money on it." But we were a little independent label in London who was doing it, and we had to ask people if we could, and we couldn't, because we couldn't offer anything like that. We didn't have any money behind us to say, "Will you take it?" And, like, we'll give you, you know, we had to just say, "Will you sell it for us for, you know, cost price, basically?" And apart from the odd sort of funny story where somebody said they bought it in a shop in Exeter or in like Wolverhampton or something, the fact was a lot of shops around the country wouldn't stock it. Not but just because there was nothing in it for them, not because it was anti-United. So really, I think at the start of the week, midweek charts, we we were like, I think we'd sold more than the Teenage Fan Club. You know, a great band from Glasgow, right? And then, but in the national actual Gallup chart, as it was, I think they went in the charts at something like number 35, and we went in at something like number 75 or something, just because they sold them all around the country. You know, I think we might have outsold them in like the northwest, but I got to know how it sort of worked and all that. But it's how it was. It was a good laugh, you know what I mean. And I don't regret any of it really. And it was just nice. So I've got my memories, and you know, it's just to roll on like years later, like going back to 2019 in Norway, and you know, we're singing it in a room where we're just done a function with Eric, and you've got Eric and his two brothers singing along to Eric the King. You think, wow, this is a bit surreal, really, you know.
That must have been such a fulfilling moment, like that moment right there. I kind of want to touch on your relationship with Eric Cantona, because obviously, since I've been following you, I've obviously seen the posts, the pictures, and you've obviously on Twitter you've shared stories kind of about Eric. How did you become like so close with Eric Cantona?
Well, I wouldn't claim I'm close, because Eric's no more. I mean, I'm very lucky, you know. He's one of the people I've met the most at United, and I've been very privileged to be in his company. I think I don't know. It was just like it was one of the funniest moments. Was like I'd met him in Budapest in 1993 when United were playing over there in a hotel. Just had a picture with him and a few people that we're fans, and it was a dumb thing. You were polite to him, and players would have a picture with you, like Fergie and Eric at different times there. And then the next time I sort of met him was going back to recording my first album. And I went down to the Pebble of the Peak pub on a Tuesday evening or something. And it was when Eric had an injury, and I think he was out for a game. He had like a bit of a plaster on his arm there.
Yeah.
And I went in the Pebble of the Peak pub, and Manchester wasn't a 24-hour city in those days. It was quiet, you know. And we went in the pub, and we went upstairs and Morris was playing his accordion, and I had the lyrics in my hand to about half a dozen songs, about 3 Eric songs, a few more, and we were just practicing because we were going to record it like the week after. And Nancy, his mum, the landlady, come upstairs into the flat and said, "Boys, there's somebody you might want to see downstairs in the pub." I went, "Yeah, whatever." "Now come down." So he goes down into the pub. Tuesday night, there's no one around, like a ghost town. And I don't know if you know the Pebble, it's got like a table football game in the vault. And Eric's playing there with 2 people, playing table football. And I'm going, and the guy at the bar, Danny, he'd never seen me quiet, like a lot of people hadn't seen me quiet. And I'm going, and I've got these lyrics in my hand, like, that's like putting that out. So I sit down with a drink, just like while they're playing table football, and they all smile over. And then Danny goes, "He writes songs about you." So they all look around and go, "Who?" And he goes, "Do you?" I went, "Yeah." And I had him in my hand. It was a surreal moment. I had these lyrics, and he could have a look. Give him like that. So he's looking there, like interested and quite a bit amazed, really, you know. So I explained what I was doing and all that. And then one of his friends recently brought a book out, maybe about 6 months ago. It was called Claude Bolly, and his brother played for Marseille and France and latterly Rangers, actually, believe it or not. And Basil Bolly, his brother, and he was also living in Manchester, and he was doing like a degree and an MA in later time on his brother and on Eric. So he invited me, he said, "Could I come round and could he take a copy of the lyrics?" Yeah. And that's really how it started. And then, of course, roll on about 6 months, and Eric has the incident at Sellers Park. Yeah. And we never really planned to release the single. I just had the tapes out. And then we got approached by somebody and said, "Look, why don't we re-record Eric the King, you know, in the studio, like a bit more professional, and, you know, in defence of Eric?" So I thought, well, there's an opportunity. Someone else was going to put it out for me. So we went to record it. But then I thought, well, wait a minute. The last thing I wanted to do was like annoy Eric and think I'm just capitalising on his misfortune. Yeah, so I approached his friend, said, "Look, we're bringing this song out in support of Eric." And he went back to me, he said, "Eric said Pete can do what he wants." I said, "Sure, okay." And around that time, Eric was quite clear that he didn't want to be exploited by United and copyright stuff. And Eric was really good with me. So we did that. And then we just, I met him a few times around that time. It was always quite brief visits. Went to see him just after the ban. I was allowed to go and see him at the old training ground. And then I just met him a couple of times at small little gatherings. I'd just seen him, and he was polite. I was also buzzing that he knew my name, really, you know. If you meet anyone, if you meet any player, a modern player now, it's nice if they know your name.
I remember when Ollie mentioned you in the press conference a couple of years ago. I remember.
Yeah, exactly. It's just flattering. It's flattering. I'm 53-year-old man now, but if Garnacho do, said, all right, Pete, I'd still be buzzing, even though I'm 53-year-old, right? But when Eric and Fergie first did it, the only way I can describe it was like being like a teenager on a bit of a date. You know what I mean? You go, but I was quite confident meeting people, whether it's by people in bands, well-known singers. I was quite cool with it. But when it was Eric and Fergie, I was a little bit. They went, I go, hello, Pete. I went, hello. I was a bit nervous at the start, you know. And then I also remember when Eric come back for the Munich Memorial game in 1998, and Claude got us into the private party thing. I was sat on this table, and Eric's family were there, and they basically I didn't know any of them, and they went, thank you. I said, what for? For when Eric was in court and all that, he saw me on on the news, on this program and that program. And I went, you know who I am? Of course we did. We saw you on this. I was going, wow, yeah, just took aback really. And then, went to, I got to meet him as the years went by and he stopped playing, and I went to meet him. And then it just got, when we decided to approach him about the trip to Norway, and it was quite a big thing because Eric had not really done much of that thing. He'd done the tour. He'd done the tour through a proper agency, but he doesn't generally do Q&As, as you can see, by his finger. He might do a whole theatre for the tour, but he doesn't really just do little one-offs like maybe a lot of ex-players. And we built up to it, approached him, and then the place we took him to in Norway is beautiful, but it's really quite small. It's I don't know, it's like some of those nice little places. When you're driving through Southern Ireland, whatever, you see those little towns, but only got a few bars and pubs in. It was on the coast, but it was really small, and it was great. I mean, it was quite one of the most surreal weekends. The organisers there, Jean-Eric had arranged this minibus with Eric Cantona. We went down on a Thursday. We picked him up from the airport, and then 2 hours in a minibus, just chatting there, sat there with Eric and his two brothers chatting, and many ways that weekend got to chat a lot more about loads of stuff, and it was just surreal. And next day we went on a speedboat around the Norwegian fjords, and Eric's driving the boat. You know what I mean? And I'm thinking, this is don't get much better than this, does it? Really? Yeah. And that was probably one of the pinnacles. Probably be hard to beat in lots of ways. And been lucky to see him since. And I'm hoping to see him again soon when he goes on his tour. The music tour, which is actually not the same. I would have been supportive of it anyway, but it's actually quite good what I've heard so far. I'm not just saying that, Yeah. It's Eric's got some really good deep influences, and he knows how much I'm into the music. And when we was in Norway, I had my Lou Reed t-shirt on, and I said to him, his brother, that some of these what I've heard, the song I've heard, it reminds me a bit that sort of Lou Reed sort of quite dark and sort of that sort of, he's got a lot of good influences of the Doors and Lou Reed, and it's quite cool, and it just shows you. I mean, we all have idols in life, and idols, and so far, sometimes your idols in life, whether it be musical or football, sometimes they can maybe let you down, or you don't want to see them at the time. And Eric's never sort of done that yet, and he's one of the few who never really, really let you down. And I just think that the very fact that when he first stopped playing football, I still think he had 3 or 4 years left in him. He could have been part of the treble, for example, right?
Yeah.
But I admire how he did it, because he's a bit sometimes some bands carry on and they record too many albums, and they could have left it as it was, yeah. TV shows like the Fawlty Towers, Finished at the 2, The Office, classic shows. They're iconic because of that. And Eric was, to me, he still had more to offer, but I think that he just felt that he'd peaked and he didn't want to cheat the fans. It's a very brave thing to do, because I know Fergie would have wanted to stay on, and we all would have wanted to stay on, really. But at the same time, I admire how he did it, you know.
Yeah.
And then what does he do? He cuts himself off from it, and he thinks, right, I want to do something completely different. So he becomes an actor, and he becomes a good actor. Let's be honest with you. He might have got a couple of parts at the start that were bit parts, but he actually became a good actor, and he's done some stuff that's got really good reviews. And then roll on a few years later, he decides he wants to be a pop star or rock star, whatever he do, right? And not only does he want to just like, he's not just releasing a song because of his name, he's writing his own stuff and playing the music, and you know, he's doing it, and I think, well, wow, this is somebody who wants to give his all, whether it was good or not. This is somebody who believes in himself.
It's ambition, though. It's ambition, because he's a footballer, actor, like musician. You throw all them things there, it shows like he has ambition, he has belief in himself. I think if you look at his performances, like Pete, on the pitch, and he's probably one of the epitomes of self-belief in terms of his quality, and he's epitomizing that, and obviously off the pitch by dipping his toes into these other professions.
Yeah, but not just thinking I can do it. Like, you know, you have some people down the years who, you know, somebody might see the sign and say, look, we can make a bit of money here, you know, we'll do this, and we'll get you to record a novelty song or something, you know, we'll do a song, we'll team you up with someone, you know, we'll make a bit of a Christmas song, something like that. This is about serious stuff. Whether or not it gets panned in years to come, but he believes in himself, and I think that's what it was that really. You know, I've still got other idols at United down the years. Of course, I have, you know, my first team I grew up watching. I idolised most of that 77 team. Jimmy Greenough, become a friend of mine, one of my main idols, and privileged to call him a friend. And I idolised him, and Steve Coppell and Macari, and then Whiteside and Robson was one of the best ever players. So these players there you know, I've idolised, but and I do still rate them up there. But Eric just had something a little bit different, as well as being the footballer he was, like he said. And this was before we knew he was going to be an actor or do his own music. He just had something about him, his presence, his aura. And I think that the truth was, when Eric went out in Manchester or went out anywhere, even if opponents said they hated him, they had to respect him, because they really thought, you know, this guy is, you know, this guy's a bit sort of like, he's something about him. He's got the presence. I mean, he also looked pretty handy as well, didn't he? You know what I mean? But so I mean, I've been lucky really. And when I was in Norway, I remember, I don't do Instagram, and somebody said that I've seen it since, but Eric had done a post on Instagram saying in this pub in Norway with my friend Pete Boyle. So yeah, I've got a photo shot of that, and I'll keep that for a long time to come. You know what I mean? And I'm looking forward to seeing him again in a couple of months when he does his tour. Hopefully, go to a couple of shows. And it's not been a great time really in the last few years for the club, in terms of you know, obviously like other teams doing better than us. And, you know, even in our own city, you know, let's be honest with you, City are a better team now for a number of years. You can look into the merits of how it's been funded, etc. But the truth is, you know, we've quite sadly that despite losing the cup final last season, Georgie said to me that it's probably been his best season watching United. And he's only 13, and although like in his lifetime we've technically won 2 titles, he doesn't remember those, because the last time we won, he was only just literally like, he'd only just turned 3. And I took him to he saw us win the FA Cup when he was 6, and the League Cup when he was 7. But, you know, and he's seen us win the League Cup again now. But this last season was what, you know, he's appreciated more. He'd been to a lot of games. We go to most of the games together, and he really enjoyed the season. I thought, wow, let's hope the law of averages suggests that he gets proper like glory, like I witnessed, really.
Oh, definitely, 100%. And you know what? It's not better. Like, even like I bring my friends who, like, I remember there a couple of months ago, my friend didn't go to Old Trafford in 12 years. And I was like, look, you're gonna have to get back over to games. And he started to become a regular match goer again. And he said to me, it's way different when you're at the game rather than at home. Like I brought him to the pubs, before the game and after, just to kind of get him back into the swing of things.
Yeah.
And like he said to me after this, he's like, you're after creating a bug for me now. He said, you're after creating a bug. I'm going to be going back over a lot more. And there's nothing like going to Old Trafford. There's nothing like meeting up with the lads before the game. There's nothing like, even for me, if I'm traveling, I have to leave my home at 1 o'clock in the morning to get over, let's say, if it's a 12:30 kickoff. There's nothing better. Even you mightn't sleep all night, but like, there's actually nothing better coming over and experiencing it all. You mentioned last season though, Pete, and obviously, look, we were quite successful. We finished third, won the League Cup. Even the FA Cup final, I know City are a great team, but it actually could have went either way. And you look at the chances in the game and stuff. Obviously, I suppose one of the biggest elephants in the room as United fans right now is kind of the takeover and kind of, I suppose, how it's been dragged out since November. You've obviously been involved with the 1958 protests and stuff. I've been at the protests, when you've been kind of taking charge and leading charge down to Old Trafford. What do you make of how the effort that the 58 have done, in the last kind of year and a half, and kind of, I suppose, let's say this takeover happens in the next couple of months. Would you like the 58 to kind of stay together and kind of work with new prospective owners coming in, try to, I suppose, rebuild that relationship with the fans?
I think it'd be good if a section at least of the 58 could be, because I think, look, no disrespect to any other fans' organisations, because I've been involved with quite a few down the years. They have done some great things, and obviously it was very sad to lose such a great guy like Ian Sterling quite recently. And remember, these people put a lot of time in down the years, and they don't take salaries. They do put their own time in for it. I just personally thought, like a lot of people, that the opposite. We needed something a bit more vibrant to sort of like, we needed things vibrant, like in terms of like the TRA in the atmosphere side of things, and we needed things vibrant like the 58. And it was a group of like disenchanted fans who thought that the existing groups weren't, I don't suppose, being militant enough, but maybe just being being as active as they could have been. And I think they've all put some shifts in down the years, but I think a little bit of more. I just think a little bit more legal direct sort of like actions of protest were needed, really.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they really did, and I think they galvanised. They went from being a little group. And who are these people? People were more interested in trying to find out who these people were. And the fact was, the 58 didn't want to be about personalities. I wasn't leading it. It wasn't about me. I was just helping behind the scenes, support some people I knew, and nobody wanted a platform for themselves. It wasn't about the last thing they wanted was people saying, "Oh yeah, this is just Pete Boyle and his mates or somebody else." So that's why I was never going to take a leading role. I supported them completely. It was just about. It was about the aims. It was about getting. It wasn't just about we're not winning. It was about we want new owners. We want our club to stop being bled dry. And whilst you could say what the current owners have done isn't illegal, it's certainly unethical to most people, most fans. And there's too many people for years were saying, "Oh, they've not been bad owners when we were winning," because we were still winning, and they've given us money and all that, and and people said no. It was always going to come to a bad ending in some stage, and it shows you how good as a manager Sir Alex was, because he could still win stuff for a number of years despite them. Think about what we maybe could have won and the ground we could have had, and it goes on to things like that. I mean, the ground, for example, for me is another issue part of it. I don't want to move from Old Trafford. I don't want to knock a ground down and move next door, right? That ground was the best ground in the country, 18 years ago, 15 years ago. Yeah, other clubs have built grounds and done marvellous things to it. But if we just spent some serious money on our ground, we could keep the nostalgia and what goes with it, the aura, like Liverpool have done. Let's be honest, love them or hate them, Liverpool have done something. They know what Anfield means to them as a club. They know what it means to the fans, and they're expanding Anfield, and that'll be better. And, you know, I don't care if Tottenham and Arsenal and City have got like a glass tunnel where you can have posh seats, or Tottenham can do special pints, whatever, you know. To me, keep the aura of the club, keep that tradition going, and improve the existing if you can. Certain clubs like City couldn't do that with Main Road. Everton needed a change. Southampton, Derby, lots of clubs needed to knock the ground and move forward, right? Clubs like United don't need to do that. Liverpool, we've got enough. It just needs to be done properly. And, you know, some people, we've got to move with the times so we can have concerts, we can have better exec facilities. Absolute nonsense. Look at Wembley, for God's sake. You know, Wembley Stadium, it might be nice for toilets. It might, but, you know, but it's still like, you know, £15 for a standard meal in the ground, It's ridiculously priced. And you know, and to be honest with you, the toilets might be a bit cleaner, but you've still got a queue as long as you did at the old Wembley. So going back, I just think that the 58 was needed. A group was needed to take it forward, to say we're not going away. You know, you can have a little protest and wave a scarf now and again, but sometimes it needed more action. And I don't think you can take away what the pressure the 58 have put towards potential selling the club. I'm not going to suggest that they're going to sell the club because the 58 did vamped it up, but let's be honest with you, they've kept it up.
Definitely taken notice. The club have definitely taken notice 100%. Like, if you look, not just the protests, if you look what the 58 have done in terms of the online campaigns that they've done, in terms of the sponsorships, obviously, you know, even with the ownership at the moment, like what they've done in terms of contacting Elliott Group, there's numerous different campaigns that the 58 have done, which, look, I think from what they have done is they've made sure that if you're either a match-going fan or you're living over in America, you can still have an impact in some way, shape, or form. I think that's the one thing that I think that's really impressed me, that they've been very inclusive to kind of, you know, all the fans all over the world, and they've basically given everybody kind of a role in helping, you know, obviously, to potentially getting the Glazers out.
Yeah, and that's because loads of other people were trying to condemn them from the start. You know, they're not doing this. You know, they won't support this empty Old Trafford nonsense and all that. What you want is trying to, like, you know, unite fans, but not just for clicks. The 58 were there. The 58 is, you know, the hardcore 58 is match-going fans who want to try and, you know, they want to support all fans who do their own bit around the world, but by the same basis, you start trying to tell people, you know, when people who never ever go to a game are trying to tell people not to go to United Liverpool, right? Let's make a big impact by not going to the game. But you weren't going anyway, like, you know. I used to say, it's like me saying I'm going to give up smoking Lambert and Butler cigarettes, right? I don't smoke at all anyway, right? Yeah. So what am I protesting about if I'm saying let's not smoke that, let's not drink that, even if I didn't drink it or didn't smoke it, right? Now, don't get me wrong, if I thought we could get 30,000 people not to go in a game, I would be at the front of that. I really would. Honestly, I would. I'm trying to be realistic, right? All it ends up doing is diluting how good the momentum's going. Because it's Manchester United, the media will run with anything, right? They will run with one person going online and saying, I'm having a protest, I'm going to say, nobody go in tomorrow against City, right? Nobody go in. So they all run it on the online, and you get like 10 people outside the ground saying don't go in. And then it looks like a flop, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right. So it dilutes it down, and it can say failed protest, they're not interested, fans aren't interested in trying to get rid of the Glazers and all that sort of thing, right? So you've got to set your targets, you've got to set realistic targets. So, and also, at the time when we had really, really good momentum going, some of those campaigns, and to try and, like, it was almost as if, like, to try and destabilise it. You know, you could almost say maybe some of those people were being paid to, you know, just to say something radical, ridiculous that no one was going to do, just to make it give us a bad name, whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah. But no, I mean, I just think that whatever the new ownership model going forward is, and let's be honest with you, nothing really is making me dance in the streets. You know, if United sold in the next few weeks, and I hope they are, people like me will be celebrating the end of the Glazers. I won't be celebrating like hailing Jim Ratcliffe or hailing the Qataris.
Yeah.
I just want my club to be out of debt. I want my club to be invested in again. I want things to be done. But it doesn't mean I approve of it. I'm not going to try and say double standards. I won't be celebrating. I didn't want it to go down the line of where we're all funded like City and Newcastle and PSG or even Chelsea were. It's just how football maybe has gone now. And, you know, maybe that'll make some other fans maybe not want to go anymore. Maybe it won't be their club anymore. But I've been quite consistent online with this. Others said, you know, other clubs fans celebrated takeovers by welcoming it and having banners for the owners and all that. I'm sure some people who just want to win everything and want to buy all the best players in the world or want to buy Mbappe and all the best players will celebrate it. But to me, the only thing I'll be celebrating is getting those out of our club.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the main thing. Once we get the Glazers out, after that, then look, we address what it needs to be addressed afterwards. We keep our house clean after that point. But most importantly, it's about getting the Glazers out 100%. Final one for you, Pete, just before you go. Obviously, there's a season coming up. Pre-season started the other day, 2-0 win over Leeds, which was great. What are your expectations, obviously, for this upcoming season? Because obviously there's takeovers could probably be happening in the background. Mason Mount has come in, Andre Onana going off the reports, the likes of Andy Mitten and that. It's close, may happen next week. What do you make in the next season coming up, and what coming off the back of a success, I suppose, relatively successful season? How high are your expectations coming into this season?
Well, in many ways, you could say that we overachieved last season with the squad he had. You would have said to me after the first few games that we would end up end up winning a trophy, getting to another final, finishing in the top 4 and top 3. It was very good, and I think Ten Hag is the man. I think he's got something about him in a big way. I don't think everyone thinks he is. I know a few people who've been a long time who say you think that he's not as good as people think he is, and everyone's entitled to their opinion. If we all thought the same, I mean, let's be honest. Some people thought Fergie should have gone lots of times in the past, right? But I think he's the man. I just hope he's not going to get too frustrated with the takeover drag-in, because he's clearly made some signings last year, like some loan signings, and try and stabilise what he had. I think that we're not going to be able to improve like we expect to improve if the takeover is not done soon, because we can't really have another season of just more loan signings. There's rumours could be a few more departures. We need to get, we do need like a new goalkeeper in. I think the guy's been a great servant. I think it was pretty poor how the club treated him.
Yeah.
I think it was right to move on and build away. I think we need a different goalkeeper. He's been a brilliant goalkeeper. It's wrong, like I said, but I think we need a goalkeeper who can play from the back. I think we need another decent centre half. We need a proper out and out striker, and possibly a couple more players. But we can't really. It's hard to sort of convince how we can get them if we don't know what we've got to spend, and unless like the manager is been guaranteed to say, look, let's get a couple of loans, let's get a couple of signings in now, and then the takeover will be done before Christmas. Get more in January, and even if that was the case, that's still going to set us back. And that, let's be honest with you. When Fergie, first come in, and we overachieved, we came runners up soon after, and then you didn't really see behind the scenes what he was building with the youth players, and the club looked like we slipped backwards again a couple of times, and you don't know. I mean, I definitely think Ten Hag is the man. Yeah, he's human. You got to question some of his tactics last season.
Phil Whitehorse is centre midfielder.
Well, yeah, I mean, Tottenham away, for example, but there again, how many times did we question Sir Alex down the years when what's he doing that for? So he's got a long way to prove himself in terms of being one of our great managers. But to win a trophy in that first season with what he had, and from how that team looked to shambles at the start of the season, and the way he got us to, Yeah, there was still a couple of horrible moments, like, the City and Liverpool games were terrible. The way we collapsed against Seville was terrible.
Yeah.
But this is him building what he's got to do, and I'm optimistic for the future, and I'm optimistic for this season to an extent. I think Mason Mount could be a good signing, but let's be honest with you, when you looked at what we needed, perhaps you didn't think Mason Mount was the key signing we needed, if you're being honest. And there's nothing against Mason Mount. I think, I think it's when you look at the bigger picture, you saw what we needed, then we wanted to sign an out-and-out striker, a decent centre-half, and a decent centre-half, and maybe a couple more players. So let's hope there's more signings in the pipeline. But I think the fans will get behind Eric Ten Hag and the team. And I think we've got to push on, really.
Definitely, Pete. And look, I think one thing I would say about this is you've seen clear progression. If you look at the situation Ten Hag had to deal with last year, the ownership, like dropping his captain, Ronaldo leaving, and then not getting a strike. And then think about it. If you look at last January, he had no money to get a striker in. And then he had to get Weghorst in on loan. Then Eriksen had that horrible injury. And then he had to get Sabitzer in on loan. So, and the fact, in the midst of all that, he gets to a final, he wins it. Gets to another final, arguably could have won it. And then, finished third in the league as well. When you look at our start, there's clear progression there with Eric Ten Hag. And I think if we get the ownership right, and we get a right proper structure behind him and give him the keys, I think we can definitely see, a definitely progressive future. And I think if you look at our managers, Pete, post Sir Alex, we've had Moyes, we've had Van Gaal, we've had Mourinho, had Ollie, all good managers in their own rights. They all brought something to the table. But you look at Eric Ten Hag right now, I think he's probably the first one that we can probably look at and say, this is a manager in their prime. Mourinho and Van Gaal had kind of done it previously, had great CVs, but they've kind of done their best work before United. Whereas with Ten Hag, he's done great work with Ajax. He's still relatively young in the game as well. So I think that's where I think if we can get it right behind the scenes, we really could have an exciting future.
Well, that's true, and I think when you said behind the scenes is such a key point now, which I've not touched on, and that's because whether that City win a lottery or not, and whether City and Liverpool have both got much better structures than United.
Yeah.
Because, for example, when they had Brendan Rodgers as manager, they never admit this, but they were getting Klopp involved. They were signing players for Klopp. They had a proper structure. When Klopp come in, he get rid of him, he has a plan and that. But look at United, when they say how much money's been wasted, because you've got people buying players there who don't know what they're doing lots of the time. Certainly, in the past with other managers, when we had players you're buying players left, right, and centre, like Snyderlin, and buying players for fun who we were getting rid of, and you couldn't see where they were fitting into the team. There was another player here and there. Going even as far as the Ronaldo situation, lots of us like the nostalgia. We didn't want him to go to City or another English club, but it was bought on nostalgia and shirt sales. And City, when they brought that recruitment team from Barcelona, the people in Barcelona didn't know who City were, they didn't know what to do. Well, suddenly they're getting 3 times the salary, and they can live in Barcelona, they can live in London, and they can do the job. And now they've got the structure. United just have had very little structure, it would have seemed, in terms of the recruitment and all that. So the new ownership would have to have a better model in place. They'd have to start having something in place above. It's not just about having money, it's about having a proper structure. You can't just start, let's just buy loads of players. You need a structure, you need a plan, you need someone that Ten Hag can work with. And I think that's really important. That's whoever does own us has got to have a plan in place like that.
Definitely. Look, we definitely need a plan. Look, I think even if we get new owners in, whether it's Sir James or whether it's Qatar, look, I think it's going to take a couple of years to be back competing, I think, consistently for a title. I think, look, there's a lot of things, like you said, that need to be put in place. But I think if you have the right manager, and we're still taking away winning trophies and obviously finishing in the top 4, we'd be going in the right direction. 2 final quick questions, Pete, just before we go. You mentioned a striker. Who'd be your ideal if you had a choice of getting a striker in? Who'd be your ideal man to come in this summer?
Well, he doesn't always inspire loads of people, but I don't know. I just think with the service he could get, I think Kane will do it for United. I don't know if we're going to get him, but I just think that, yeah, in an ideal world, I'd like to have a continental striker top of his game, right? But I don't know. I mean, for what I've seen and all that, I would like to. I think Kane would be a great fit for United. I do think he'd score goals. I mean, it's a bit of a split one. I mean, it's like when I thought we were going to sign Shearer second time round, and part of me didn't really want him because of, I don't know, we might never had Ollie and all that. But the truth of the matter was, no matter what you thought of Shearer, had he been at United, we probably would have won 2 more European Cups, yeah.
Yeah.
Because he was at the peak of his game. With the service he would have got, there's no doubt about it, he would have scored for us. And I think Kane is another one who we could possibly, we could still do stuff out of, really. But again, I think Ten Hag, if he's got eyes on players who he thinks he can do it, then I'll go with it. I'd like to be surprised. In many ways, I'd rather he just brought someone out of the blue I've never even really paid much attention to and get to, But if at the top of my head, I don't watch loads of football all the time abroad. I don't watch loads of European leagues. But I've seen Kane play some pretty average teams and score some goals, And I think
especially last year, Pete, Spurs struggled and he still got over 20 league goals. Like, imagine Bruno Fernandes supplying him, that could be different. Like, really good.
I think so. Yeah. I think he's still. I think he's got a lot to offer. And I think he's. He might just be happy to just ride it out and just be a Tottenham legend. But sometimes I admire that. Sometimes people say it's lack of ambition, but I sometimes I sort of admire that in a way. Steve Bull did it years ago at Wolves, and people might call him. He was playing for England. He was in the 3rd tier, and he stayed at Wolves, and he's got a stand named after him. He might not have won much of any call. He got a few England caps, but I sort of admire it really. But then again, Rooney showed it. He wanted to go and win trophies and all that, and so I think it's somewhere in the middle really. But I think he would definitely add something to United. I think he could be a significant part of any future jigsaw. But again, he might be signing someone we never heard of. It might be a new Ollie who might become our new hero.
Yeah, definitely. Like, the young fella we're looking at more from Italy looks promising. So maybe you're right. We could have that kind of young striker come in and do well. Final question. You look at our current squad now. We've obviously have a good few of the world-class players in there. Obviously, the 99 team and the 2008 team, obviously one won the double, one won the treble. If you could pick a player in our current squad to make that one of them squads, which year, who would you think would thrive in either squad out of our current team?
Player out of our current team who could play in one of those squads? Good question. I suppose you could, but because Keane, Scholes were injured, so you wouldn't necessarily have Bruno in that team in '99. But out of the players on the pitch, Bruno might have got a run in there. I'd say. I'd say Bruno could have possibly squeezed in the squad, at least in '99. He would have added something to it as well. And let's think now. That's a really good question. Is that a really good question, or is it proving how few we've got? I'm only looking at the compositions.
I was asked this question a couple of weeks ago by a lad in work, and I was saying, like, if you're looking at '99, imagine you had Roy Keane. Let's say if Scholesy was playing. Let's say if United weren't playing 4-4-2 and we played 4-5-1, and you had a midfield of Casemiro and Roy Keane in the same midfield.
Yeah,
that'd be no nonsense.
Yeah, Casemiro is actually, I'll be honest. I'm thinking Bruno, Casemiro, or even Varane at some stage I love Casemiro and Varane in the same team. I do. I just always think Varane's going to get injured, sadly. But I would actually say it'd be Casemiro would be great in that squad. But I don't like to. Part of me doesn't want to sort of also to think
Replace
about
anyone.
taking anyone out, because some of the people who were like almost unsung here in those
Yeah.
squads back in the day, you know, like your Ronnies and your Hennings and all that, you know.
Yeah. It's definitely. I think that's why when I framed the question, it's the squad rather than the starting 11. Because I asked Lou McCarry actually this question 2 years ago as well, on the podcast, and he said Rashford and Bruno, as well back then. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that question up because I like asking fans that particular question. Because obviously, when you look at them two teams, they were just all-time greats, and that 08 team so close to a treble as well. Bar that Portsmouth game, Joe, it's mad because we won 2 trebles in the space of a decade. It's absolutely crazy. But Pete, we're going to wrap it up there for this evening. Thanks very much for coming on chatting. It's been a great chat, and I've been intrigued by your story. And it's great to chat about United with like-minded Reds, as well. Look, I'll probably meet you in Dublin as well before the game as well. In 3 weeks time. It'd be good to meet in person and have a chat about United as well.
We'll have to get to Bruxelles and get the music on in there, okay? So take care. Thanks very much.
No worries. Thanks very much. Cheers for coming on.
Thank you.
Take care.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.